Hello and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Osceola Seminole Sidelines. My name is Pat Burnham, and I'm joined today by our first guest, Osceola editor Bob Ferrante. We got Kurt Weiler coming up here in about 15 or 20 minutes. Bob and I are going to talk a little spring football. Kurt's going to come on and talk a little bit of basketball and baseball, and then we'll finish up the show. We'll have Nick Carlisle on to talk a little bit about Miami rivals camp and a little bit about some visitors that were on campus yesterday for practice. Got 2027 commits in the last week, and we'll talk a little bit about why that does and does not matter. But Bob, welcome to the show.
Pat, how you doing? Happy Wednesday.
It is it's a hot Wednesday in Tallahassee. I think we're done with spring. It was 84 degrees by 11:30. I went outside, did some walking with the dog, and it was not as nice as yesterday or the day before. But yeah, listen, spring is definitely in there. Summer's getting ready to get here, and FSU's about halfway through spring football. They had practice number 7 on Tuesday. It's the first practice since they scrimmaged on Saturday. Mike Norvell said it was a good test, and he liked the response. It was kind of hard to get a read on what Mike, he was talking a lot of generalities outside of a couple of kids, but his body language seemed like he might not have been as impressed with practice as what his words gave away, but because he seemed a little bit intense. But yeah, listen, that's the nature of coaches, right? They don't have enough time to flush what's ever frustrating them coming off the practice field before they talk to us. But just what are some of your key takeaways for you today, from you on Mike's press conference and practice number 7?
I think the big piece of positive news, I want to hit on is Shyheim Brown is back on the practice field. And Mike had said, going into the spring that Shyheim was going to miss the entire spring. And you kind of think about what does your secondary look like without, Conrad Hussey, Shyheim Brown, and of course, Edwin Joseph going down. But, to get Shyheim back on Tuesday is a big deal. Kind of have that veteran back there. I think, like Pat, you and I were talking before we started that we do hear similar names again and again from Mike Norvell. That kind of consistency, I think, is what you want to hear from coaches. Sam Singleton is a name that we're hearing a lot, I think, day after day. And I kind of question, where he'll be on the depth chart, because we know the caliber of running back on this roster. That's a tough room to break through for Sam. But if he can, that's a guy that's going to be really interesting to see if he breaks in. We talked to Roydell Williams too, heard good things about his scrimmage from Saturday. I think, let me state the obvious. We're on the outside, trying to look in to some extent and read the tea leaves. These practices are running long. We're asking the media to be there at 6:15 for Mike Norvell on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We're getting him around 7 o'clock or later. So these are not short practices. These are going long for maybe some extra running reasons, but they're going long, and I think Mike Norvell is kind of keeping a lot of these details close to the vest. But
Well, now that you mentioned it, I do remember being outside the practice field on Saturday, and the cadence of the whistle sounded like he might have been running some guys, because one of the things that Mike does when he gets mad at the players, and I've seen it very seldom, he runs those 35 10-yard sprints with them. So that might have been it. But yeah, certainly he had talked about Sam Singleton again for the second time. Listen, glad to see Shyheim is back. I think if any guy needs to on defense, first of all, he's probably going to be in the middle of the field. I don't know if they would have him a rover with Earl Little or keep him at one of the safety positions. We'll see. But he is a guy that I think could benefit from a very physical spring. Now, Mike did not allude to how much he could do. But I do think after coming off what was not a very good year for Shyheim, getting him any practice, but I would like to, and who knows what's going to happen. I guess we'll find out in the scrimmage we're allowed to go to, which sounds like it's going to be next Saturday, not this Saturday. I'd like to see a more physical Shaheem Brown. I'd like to see a better tackling come out of Shaheem. So anytime he can get on the field with Evan Cooper and Tony White, to me, is highly important because he is going to be a guy that's going to be counted on this upcoming season, and he really does need to have a much better season in 2025 than he did 2026. He talked more about Earl Little. We'd heard Tony White say that he's him. Now that when I think he's him in Tallahassee, I think Derwin James, I think Deion Sanders, I think Terrell Buckley, I think Stan Shiver. We'll find out if I don't know if Tony White knows that's who him is at Florida State. He's been at Syracuse, he's been at Nebraska, but him and Tallahassee is a little bit different than him other places. But listen, Mike came out and said he had his best day in a practice, in a scrimmage situation since he's been at FSU. He came in with a lot of fanfare. Everybody expected him to come in and replace the kid that transferred out the year before, Greedy Vance. That didn't happen. He didn't get on the field until later in the season. But a kid coming out of high school that had a ton of potential, signed at Alabama, and now we've heard Mike talk about him in a positive manner after reviewing the film, and Tony was obviously very impressed. So I think that's good because he does have he had a lot of potential coming out of high school. It's funny who we talked about, because as they were walking out to the practice field on Saturday, a group of offensive linemen came walking by me as I'm checking on who's there from a recruiting standpoint. And I just happened to notice Jonathan Daniels and how much different his physique looks than it did when he got here last year. So sure enough, when Mike gets asked about two of the younger offensive linemen, Jonathan Daniels was one of those. And, obviously I had no idea just looking at him, but I was like, dang, that kid, that's a pretty offensive lineman right there. I mean, he looks right. He is slapped together right now. I mean, you can tell he's put time in the weight room, and so that was good to hear. Listen, I think we talked about Andre Otto before as a kid we really thought was going to have an impact last year. Struggled at times when he was inserted in the games, but it certainly sounds like, according to Mike, that he continues to progress. We know he's working at center. That's probably more as a backup because they've talked about Luke Pettibon. That's another kid's name we continue to hear is Luke Pettibon, the center from Wake Forest. So yeah, the repetitive stuff I am very glad to hear. Listen, I think the thing that surprises me, if you want to know the truth, we've talked at some extent, Bob, about Mike maybe being a little bit more forthcoming with us not being at practice in these interviews. I'm not sure I thought that was the case yesterday, except for the quarterbacks. I'm surprised he has taught, when you bring in a transfer quarterback, like last year, it was all DJU, right? We didn't hear much about Brock and Luke during spring. Listen, he used the word remarkable when talking about Brock Glenn. I don't think I've ever heard Mike use the word remarkable talking about any of his quarterbacks. Now, obviously, probably unbelievable, but dynamic with Jordan Travis, all those adjectives. But then talked more. He talked a lot very positively about Kevin Sperry coming out of the scrimmage and doubled down on that after film review. I think it certainly makes for great conversation when you got three quarterbacks to talk about. But I mean, how do you read, like I said, what he said about them? What did you hear?
I think a lot of this we have to say is diplomacy from a head coach about quarterbacks and wanting to spread the wealth of praise. I think it's good to hear that Kevin Sperry is throwing touchdowns, but also Mike Norvell admitting he's had his freshman moments. He's had interceptions. He's made those mistakes that you would widely expect from a freshman who's trying to early enroll and get out there and compete with guys, 3, 4, 5 years older. But it's good to see. And, I kind of expected Brock Glenn to not necessarily take a step forward, but to just feel more comfortable. Just feel like, hey, I'm the guy who's been here now year 3. I know it's a new scheme, but he's played tempo. Yep. He knows some of these wide receivers. He's thrown to some of these wide receivers and the tight ends. I mean, he remembers Marquiston Douglas from 2023. There's enough familiarity there for Brock Glenn to kind of have that kind of confidence going in, day out So I don't know what to take anything broadly from this, other than I just think Mike Norvell is doing a really good job of maybe spreading that praise around and making sure kind of everybody gets that attaboy in the media.
Yeah, I'm trying not to be a cynic and relate everything to April 16th, but sometimes I wonder. Sometimes, but listen, he's been. I think it's a good thing if what we're hearing is the gospel truth. That's a great situation for Florida State because if Tommy Castellanos for whatever reason hasn't come out of a ball game next year, it certainly feels like they are getting more and more comfortable with both Brock and with Kevin, and I think it's and maybe it's keeping Tommy on his toes. Jimmy Johnson and Bill Parcells and the great coaches always did. Coach Bowden even spoke to their players through the media and motivated them through the media. So maybe that's part of this. Who knows? Might maybe crazy like a fox. We'll find out. But listen, it was certainly good to hear that. We heard Elijah Moore's name again. I think that's now multiple times. Mike said he didn't have an elite day, but he had a solid day. So we know he's had at least one day that's better than that this spring. But as bad as Florida State needs production out of the receivers and improvement, that's good to hear. We heard Jaylen Brown. Needs to be more consistent. I just can't unsee the Duke game where he didn't chase down that's just hard for me to get out of my mind. Anytime I hear anything negative about associated with him, even consistency, it makes, and we've heard Mike talk about effort on both sides of the ball, but listen, he's a tremendously fast guy. If he can get consistent, and Florida State feels like we've heard Deuce Robinson's legit from our sources, that certainly looks to be a guy that's going to play a lot of football for Florida State over the next couple of years. And then, of course, Squirrel is probably the most productive guy coming into next year's squad. So, and I'm, to be honest with you, I'm as looking forward to seeing him in the scrimmage as I am anything else. I want to see, the nickname gets you excited, but anyway, that I think it's great that we're starting to hear him talk about individual players more. But the quarterback thing to me was the most interesting thing I heard. But anyway, anything else coming out of practice, Bob, that you want to hit on?
I don't know what to make of this comment, Pat. I'll let you maybe unpack it with me. But you talked about Adrian Medley, being really outstanding in this offense, having that knowledge. He says he's got great versatility. Now, again, Adrian played for Herb Hand and Gus Malzahn at UCF. Yes, we think he's a guard. I don't think he's going to be a tackle, but what does that necessarily mean as far as versatility? Or is it just as easy as, hey, we're moving him around as part of spring cross training? I thought it was a really praiseworthy moment from Norvell to be that kind of interesting comment about versatility.
Yeah, well, I mean, we know in the past that they've liked to be able to play players at multiple positions. And when they first got here, Mike and Alex were kind of forced to, because it was a very watered down offensive line room as far as guys that could play football. And I do think that, Adrian is a guy that I think could play either center or guard. Now, does he have the ability to slide out to tackle? I'm sure he does. I don't know which side you'd put him on. But yeah, listen, I think, obviously he's a guy that should be able to help the rest of his offensive linemen acclimate to this system. He's played for Herb Hand. He's played in Gus Malzahn's offense. And obviously it's good to hear, because as Mark and I were breaking down the offensive linemen in our preview this first day before they got into full pads, his take was on the four transfers, Medley was the one that was the least talented or had the chance to be the least dominant. Not that he's not a good player, but we're comparing them to each other, right? We're kind of ranking them as we were going through. So that is good to hear. And obviously he's played a lot of football. I believe he, if I can remember correctly, I think he was graded out the highest in the pass blocking of all the transfers. I could be wrong. It could have been him or Petitbon, but they're inside. Their numbers should be better. They get help. But anyway, yeah. So I think that's good. This is the first time we've heard his name mentioned, I believe, by Mike. So I think he's now hit on two of the transfers, has not talked much about Pettis or the Gunnar Hansen. We have not heard their names yet, and I don't think Herb Hand has talked to the media yet. It'll be very interesting, I think, when he sits down. Have we gotten him after practice yet, Herb Hand?
No, I think we're going to stick with coordinators after these scrimmages. So
Okay.
hoping to get a guy like Herb Hand at some point before spring practice wraps up.
Yeah, I would hope they'd put all those new coaches, since we're not able to watch them coach, I would hope they'd put all these coaches in front of the media before spring's over and allow us to ask them questions about their specific position groups, because they work with them on a daily basis and they've probably got a better idea of who's doing what than somebody that's not watching them every snap of the practice. But anyway, so all right, well, that is our update for football, Bob, and I appreciate you jumping on. And we are going to flip to baseball and basketball right now with Kurt Weiler, and I'm going to let Kurt in, I think. And we're going to get Kurt in here. He's got a lot of updates. Been a very busy man between basketball and baseball, and he thought football season was busy. Kurt,
and football too. I wasn't there last night, but I'm there plenty.
Yeah, the coaching change in basketball has got you doing double duty, because there's a lot going on with basketball. But let's talk a little bit about baseball first. I did not watch the game on the internet last night. I wanted to listen to Lulu, so I turned it on about 6:07 p.m. and I hear there's a shot, and of course I just assume since it's going out of the park, it's Florida State. And it was Jacksonville taking a 5-0 lead in the bottom of the first. You were there at the game. What was it like? It was certainly entertaining, if nothing else.
I mean, those midweek games are highly variable. I mean, it did 2 weeks before that one was the Mercer game, where they got in a similar early hole and the offense wasn't there and they didn't crawl their way out of it. I think they lost 9-2. This one, the offense was there. They won, I think, 11-10. I mean, it was more thrilling than you thought, but I mean, they have struggled to find an Evan Crest replacement since he went down 3 weeks ago in the first game against Florida. The last three midweek, or two of the last three midweek games since then, have really been adventures on the mound, and there've been some struggles that you just are going to happen over the course of a season. It's a long season.
Yeah, I guess they call it like in the Major League Baseball, they call it a bullpen game, right?
Yeah, Johnny Holstaff bullpen. Yeah, something to that effect. Yeah, that's kind of. I mean, I think that the problem is, so they started Hudson Rowan last night. It was his first career start, actually, and I think Hudson was a guy who was right there in the mix to be the midweek starter coming into the year. And then I think in the first weekend of the season, he hurt his oblique. He missed some time and has come back and just hasn't been kind of what he was, or he was pretty effective in the preseason. I saw him a couple times. He looked pretty good, but he only lasted a third of an inning. I think 4 or 5 guys reached on him. He walked 3 of the first 5 guys he faced, and that was it for him. And it kind of put him in a hole, and some other guys struggled, but they got a few who settled it down for him. Brady Loucks deserves credit for 3 innings of really good work, and Ben Barrett came out of the bullpen and got a clutch out in the 9th with the tying run on second to preserve it. So a few guys stepped up, but yeah, I mean, I think it's the stat I tweeted and I put in my story. I think 3 of the last 3 9-inning games they've played, they've walked 9 or more guys. I mean, Wes Mendez has had some control issues. Jamie's had some. The bullpen's had some. It has not been as good as it was early this year. The last couple games kind of feels like that time in the season where just like you can hit that wall a little bit.
Yeah, and listen, I think that's the thing in college baseball, right? It's who's your midweek starter. I don't want to say it's not as important as every other game, but it tends to be not a conference opponent. It's I guess what you'd call a group of 5 team would be in here playing, or you're playing a group of 5 outside of obviously Florida who they play midweek. But yeah, so somebody said to me, text me during the game when it was 5-0, oh boy, we're down. This is going to be a tough game. I was like, well, no, man. I said, Florida State can knock the cover off the ball. I said, this is still 9 innings to go. I said, Florida State is not even batted yet. Now, I did not know they were going to put 11 runs up on the board when I said that. I said, no, so this game will probably end up 6-5 or something like that. But listen, you followed baseball very closely at Florida State. The Bailey kid, when's the last time you saw a freshman come in and do what Miles Bailey is doing?
I think he might still. I wonder if it's still true, but as of a couple of days ago, I think he led all true freshmen in the country in homers. I mean, you don't see many freshmen. I haven't seen a ton of true freshmen come in with the type of raw power he's had. I mean, I know I've seen kind of some national guys who cover college baseball on a broader scale, even more than I do, said, like, I think I saw someone say, like, you do not see many true freshmen who have this raw power. Baseball kind of grades on the their scale of things is 20 to 80. Don't ask me why that's how it is. That's just like 80 is like you are elite of the elite at that trait. And I think they kind of said Miles has like 70 power. So like, I mean, that for a true freshman, I mean, it took him a little bit to make that leap, if you will. It took him a little bit to get adjusted. I think he was having to get used to higher level pitching and teams having the staffs to be able to bring in a lefty reliever out of the bullpen just to face him and make that matchup tougher for him. But he has adjusted really well. He had 3 more hits last night. I think he's hitting over 350 past the halfway point of the year, which is another, like, you don't see a ton of true freshmen do that. I mean, the power is legit. He has 9 homers, but the pure overall hitting is really impressive too. It's something to behold.
Yeah. Now Max Williams, the only guy that went out of the park last night, right?
Max had 2 of the 3 homers. James Hankerson got one too.
Okay, all right.
Hankerson homered in the second game on Sunday. It was his first career start. He homered, and he was a triple short of the cycle. He had 6 RBI. He got another start last night and homered again. Mink made a joke post game about Hankerson because he doesn't wear batting gloves. He talked about it's like his middle school coach or whatever, coach from a long time ago, just was like, I don't really like batting gloves, and he learned it that way. And I think Link called him the au natural hitter. He says he doesn't wear batting gloves, and he doesn't really wear shoes often in the weight room when he's lifting. So maybe an odd bird, if you will. But hey, he's been productive. And yeah, Max, I think, is now the ACC leader in homers. 2 more last night. He's at 14. So I think he is leading the way in the ACC and among the top nationally now.
Max is all right at 14 home runs?
Yeah. Yeah, he had 12 going into last night. He had 2 more. I need to dig into the numbers of like how many he's had, because he didn't get off to the hottest start on that front. I feel like he might have 10 in the last like 15, 18 games. Like he's been on a tear.
Yeah, you got him in top 5 nationally. And I thought Low Dice was hot. And we'll talk a little bit about him on Friday, because I know you talked to him this morning. And you're going to have an article at theosceola.com talking to Low Dice. But kind of, do you want to tease the story before you just want to wait till Friday to talk about it? And
stories don't get much better timing than I talked to Alex Lodis this afternoon, a little bit ago, about a couple hours after D1 Baseball and Perfect Game named him their midseason National Player of the Year, which is a pretty impressive honor. I think he didn't have that type of hype. I think people thought he could take a step forward, but he didn't enter the year with that type of hype, and he's hitting 466. He has, I think, 11 homers. He's tied for the national lead in hits, among the leaders in batting average. It's been quite a year for him, really, since about midway through last year, his first year at Florida State after transferring in. He has been on a tear, and it was great to talk to him. He thought had some great things to say about the difference Link Jarrett's made for him on a number of facets, and kind of what's been the difference and what the attention he's received on some of his viral moments this year has meant to him, because he's had a few of those.
Yeah, so Kurt, as Kurt said, he spoke with Alex Lodis this morning and this afternoon, and he will have his article. He's working on it before we brought him on. He's already starting to crank it out, and so he'll have that at theosceola.com for everyone to read. And I'm looking forward to seeing what Alex had to say. As you said, he just learned of those midseason honors, which is probably. It's obviously very gratifying to be recognized when you're having the kind of season he has, but I'm sure he's got bigger goals in mind. But listen, kid's been on fire. So has Max Williams. So has Miles Bailey. Listen, this is going to be a hard team to slow down, and they're fun to watch. And listen, little midweek close game. Never hurt anybody. You got Wake Forest coming in here. No time for complacency. You got a ranked team coming in for the first. Your second ACC
not anymore.
Third ACC series.
They fell out of the polls this week.
Were they like 16?
Yeah, they got swept at home by Virginia Tech. But they are still a really good team. They will probably end up ranked. It wouldn't be a surprise at all if they play their way back into the polls. They are not currently ranked, but feels like end of the season polls is what matters more for that anyways.
Well, yeah, but that's a big fall from 16 to out.
Getting swept at home will do that.
Yeah. Well, I didn't realize I get swept, but all right. So Wake Forest coming in here. We'll have Kurt back on Talk Baseball on Friday to give us a little Wake Forest preview, talk about Alex Lodice. So we will have more Seminole baseball coverage on Friday, but we've been talking about basketball for quite a couple of days. And of course, we, as we were talking about when we met yesterday, typically the postseason for Florida State with Leonard Hamilton was not near as exciting as it's been with first-year head coach Luke Loucks, who has started to hit the transfer portal, Kurt, and he's landed 3 guys, 2 signed, 1 committed, and he's got another kid that just finished up an official visit. First of all, before we get into those individual players, what has kind of been your takeaway? You've done most of the coverage of the basketball program since you and Bob specifically, since the transition was made known and we started tracking who was hired. Of course, I think Mike Alford showed his hand when he had Luke Loucks up in the press box for a visit for a game that I guess they were honoring Leonard, or they had something going on. I'm not sure exactly. They might have been honoring the 2013 team. I cannot remember what was happening. But anyway, what are your overall thoughts on Luke, our first impressions of Luke, I guess, 3 weeks into the job?
It's been an adaptation covering what the off seasons were kind of like in the portal era under Leonard. And that's not to take away from Leonard, who had a lot of success and was kind of a master of doing more with less at schools where he didn't have the most support, where basketball was kind of second fiddle. But it has definitely changed with how all over the place Luke has been with. I mean, he's all over the place fundraising. You've heard some really good early returns on that front that will only really help his program and then the roster building. You've heard some good returns. I mean, obviously, the first 3 D1 transfer they've had visit have all committed, and they had a 4th in yesterday who you wouldn't be surprised if he followed it at some point. But it's been a lot, but it definitely you feel the surge of energy and youth that comes from. I mean, Luke is my age. We were freshmen at Florida State the same year. I was in the Knoll Zone for all his games his freshman year on that Tony Douglas team, 2008, 2009. You definitely feel that surge of energy around the program that just hasn't been there in a minute as Leonard struggled at times to kind of adapt to the new age of college basketball.
Yeah, well, it looks like, they've brought in a couple of scorers in LeJay Jones from St. Bonaventure and Kobe McGee from Drexel, and then a very experienced power forward in Chauncey Wiggins. What stands out to you about those guys, Kurt, individually, and how can they help Luke Loucks' basketball team based on what you know about his philosophy, which I believe is shoot 'em up, right?
What I've learned is it kind of going exactly how I thought it would from a standpoint of it sure seems like, I mean, you watch today's NBA, and I'll admit I don't watch a ton of NBA. I wouldn't watch a ton, especially NBA regular season. It's just not my favorite sport to spend time on. But when you do watch it, I mean, pretty much everyone can shoot to one degree or another. It kind of, the idea is, if even your center has a bit of shooting ability, it can stretch the floor and it really opens things up for the offense, for penetration, things like that. And I think you're really seeing, I mean, all 3 of the guys, even the 6'10" forward Chauncey Wiggins who they've brought in are shooters to at least a degree. I think all like 36 or so better percent from 3 this past season. Kobe McGee was all the way up at like 43% at Drexel. So I think shooting is definitely, I mean, that hasn't always been Leonard's biggest priority. I think he's prioritized size and other things. And Luke definitely is talked about, there's going to be an NBA offense with space and pace, and the guys he's recruiting, you're seeing the vision of that play out 100%.
Yeah, in your article, you mentioned that Kobe McGee was 1 3-point attempt short of qualifying for the top 10. He did not have the required number, but his 14 points led Drexel in scoring. 43.9 would have put him in the top 10 if he'd shot one more three-pointer. I don't know what the minimum is. I'm assuming 100. Who knows? And then, of course, you had LaJoy make 33 starts for St. Bonnie, 10 points per game, and then you had Wiggins 97 games over the course of his Clemson career. So, listen, we're starting to see what he likes, starting to see what he's going after. And as you mentioned before we started talking, a lot of these, 3 of the 4, at least for now, are G5 kids. And, you don't have to, in some regards to that, you don't have to blow the entire bank off on one kid if you're recruiting from that level. And I think that's probably, we've seen Florida State do that in football with not necessarily NIL related or anything like that, but we've seen them bring Jared Verson from a FCS school and Braden Fisk from a group of 5 where they were high caliber players that transition well into major college football. So maybe that will be the case for basketball. Any other, I know he finished off, now Curdy, if I'm correct, he's finished off his staff, right? At least on the court staff.
On the court staff, yeah, I think that's the case. I think there'll be some more off field that will come at some point. He kind of hasn't nailed down when the strength and conditioning hire is going to be made at some point. And I think it sounds like immediately he's not going to have a GM. I think kind of like if you don't have a GM now, you don't need a GM immediately. But at some point, it sounds like he wants to have someone in a GM role, kind of supervising roster, helping him with supervising of the roster building, things like that.
Yeah. Well, Kurt, we appreciate it. I know you'll be back on the show on Friday to talk a little bit of spring football.
There might be another basketball commit by then too. Who knows?
Yeah, well, I'm sure that'll happen. It usually does. Everything comes at one time. But we appreciate you jumping on. What we're going to do now, if you want to read Kurt's article on the baseball game from last night, go to theosceola.com, and it'll be there. He will have his article on Alex Lodice probably. What are you thinking tomorrow, Kurt, on that?
Yeah, it'll be up.
Yeah, so Kurt will have that tomorrow at theosceola.com. But Kurt, we will talk to you later and see you on Friday, man. Appreciate you joining us, and we'll be right back in about 1 minute after we hear from two of our sponsors here at the Osceola Seminole Sidelines.
Hey Seminole fans, Alumni Hall is your ultimate FSU shopping experience and has moved to a new location off Timberlane Road in Tallahassee. Shop FSU gear from Nike, Champion, New Era, Yeti, and more. Alumni Hall has Seminole gear for the entire family, plus accessories and gifts. Spend $150 and you'll earn $10 off your next purchase with their Hall Pass rewards. Stop by their new location on Timberlane Road near REI or shop anytime online at alumnihall.com. Alumni Hall, where Seminole fans shop. Finding an experienced lawyer you can trust is crucial. With over 50 years of combined litigation experience, the attorneys at Mowry Law Firm are dedicated to providing our clients with exceptional legal services, focusing on car and trucking accidents, premises liability, and wrongful death. Call 904-824-7799, MowryLaw.com.
All right, welcome back to the Osceola Seminole Sidelines. I am Pat Burnham. Well, we've been talking with Bob Ferrante and Kurt Weiler, and now we're going to bring in Osceola recruiting writer Nick Carlisle in. And Nick did a little traveling for us this past weekend. Well, Nick, how was your trip to South Beach to watch Rivals Elite Camp? Let's talk about the trip, then we'll talk about the camp.
The trip was fine. It's always good to go down and see my folks for a couple of days, get mama's home cooking for a night or two, celebrate my birthday a little bit early. My birthday's next Monday, so got to spend a little time with the family. Trip was really nice. Wish it wasn't raining so much down there, but hey, we live in Florida. What can you do? That's the way it goes sometimes.
Well, especially down there now. Weather change every 15 minutes. All right, so obviously you were down there for the Rivals camp. You went for the Elite camp on Sunday. A ton of players down there. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, you didn't get to see everybody because they, as you said, got rained out, and you got to see the big boys, which is probably the most important. I don't know, at a camp like that, it's probably more important to see quarterbacks and wide receivers, just because it's hard to recreate what you do in offensive line play there and defensive line play at a non-padded camp. But you were there nonetheless, and kind of talk to us about some of the players that either, that are interested in Florida State and made an impression on you in that camp.
Yeah, on the defense, let's start with the defensive side of the ball first. The defensive MVP for the entire camp, or at least the defensive line portion, was Jay Cruel, and I don't know how much of a surprise that is. The kid is just one of the best prospects in the country this cycle, and I think one of the more impressive things about what I took away from watching Cruel, I think this is like the third or fourth time I've watched him on the camp circuit, is Cruel is an established prospect now. He's one of the guys that everybody in the country has on their board, yet he still comes to these camps and he still plays with a ton of effort, explosiveness, and he comes with a smile on his face. And he comes, for the competition and to help others. There was a 2027 offensive lineman, that he was able to talk to him after and say, hey, listen, the reason I was able to bend around you and get around you so quickly is because your outside foot was positioned this way. So I'm just impressed with the not only that the athlete that he is, but the competitor that he is as well. He's so explosive. I love his motor. And just talking with sources from the camp specifically about him, I feel a lot better about how his visit went with Florida State. either a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. That spring practice visit, as you know, for those of you who watched the show a couple weeks ago, I wasn't entirely convinced that that visit would have resulted in Florida State getting an official visit. But, after talking to sources, I think, he wasn't fibbing when he said, look, the acquisition of the Nebraska coaches, being both Tony White and Terrence Knighton, really helped Florida State make up a lot of ground in this recruitment to where I think they're in a much better position to receive an official visit from Krul. On the offensive side of the ball, the person that I was the most impressed with that Florida State is in on is a 6'8" offensive tackle, or offensive tackle, Chancellor Campbell. I almost try to get ahead of myself there. Look, for how big he is, I was actually quite surprised and impressed with how well he was able to move. He's a guy that Florida State is a little bit behind on right now. I don't remember him being on campus recently. He might have been here in January for a junior visit.
He was.
Either way, he's going to be back in the next couple of weeks, he told me, for an unofficial visit this spring. And essentially, that's when they're going to work out official visit dates if he's going to take an official visit with Florida State. He's definitely one of the taller, more monstrous prospects on Florida State's offensive line board. But he was somebody that had a really, really good day, and having not known as much about him going into the camp, being able to watch him work, being able to see his footwork and how well he's being able to move his body against a lot of the defensive ends at the camp, which were honestly really fast and twitchy. It was impressive to see. So I think Florida State has a lot of room to catch up there. It'll be on them to make that successful visit in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, because I think he's got a couple of other official visits already set up. So
he does. Penn State and Florida off the top of my head.
Yeah. And I think they kind of got on him late. I'm not sure why. Obviously he's if you had to comp him just body wise, it'd be to Lucas Simmons from that area of the state as well. But yeah, I think he's, I remember seeing he's a tremendously huge kid. He's got a lot of room to put weight on his frame. We have him listed as 285. That frame could easily carry over well over 300 pounds. And so, yeah, I think they got some room to go there. Krul, yeah, that's going to be interesting. You have him as a must-have prospect. I think it'd be great if they could get him. They did not offer him until last spring. We were there when they offered, the day he offered him at spring practice. Actually, I don't know if it was spring. Might have even been camp, Nick.
I think it was the elite camp. Yeah, for whatever reason, I think I came away from the Miami camp last year saying, hey, the Florida State should get in on this guy. And they were a little bit late to the party, but obviously not late enough to truly have a shot with him. And of course, there are some family ties to Florida State, as his mom went to Florida State, but his dad did go to Florida. So if you're one of those that likes to hope and pray for family connections and having that lean towards a specific program, I'm not sure that that's going to help you in this case.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons these guys go to these camps because their recruiting profile continues to go. There's going to be video. There's going to be people writing up reports, and we've seen kids blow up at these camps before. We've seen kids, Tramel Jones, ex-Florida State commit, who's now at Florida. His last summer, all those 7-on-7 camps. That's when his profile really started taking off, and so I think that's one of the reasons. I think they can help build their stock, for lack of a better term. And if they don't have a great day, well, it's not real football anyway, right? So I think that's part of it. But yeah, Jake and Chancellor are both outstanding looking prospects. I know you got a chance. I know the offensive line MVP is Chancellor Barclay, who's recently committed to Clemson. Did he say anything about Florida State? Any inclination that Florida State may still be in it?
No, okay. Florida State's not in this. I think he's going to stick to Clemson. I would be shocked if he goes anywhere else based on talking to not only him, but those around him, those around at the camp. So I think he's destined to be a Tiger unless something insane happens.
Now, I know you were impressed with Ryan Moret. I think he's got a Florida State offer. It sounds like they're still in the process of determining whether there's going to be an official visit. Miami Southridge, offensive lineman, state wrestling champ. What was your take on him as a prospect?
I'm not sure that he does have an offer from Florida State, but he's definitely somebody that they should invest in or take a look at. I was really impressed with. They worked him, I believe, at right guard for the one-on-one in pass pros, and I was impressed with his handwork. Obviously, he's a state championship wrestler. So those guys typically do have better hands, and obviously wrestling helps with that. But he's strong, he's powerful. The only thing that I noticed is that he had the tendency to kind of, let's say, get a little grabby and take his defender to the ground, and that definitely would be dragging some flags or in a real game setting. But I think he's definitely a prospect with a lot of upside that they need to take a look at. He's got official visits to Miami, I believe, and one other school. So they will be battling Miami if they do get involved. And obviously it's trending on the later side now, but definitely somebody to look at. I liked what I saw from him in the short sample size. So let's see if they get involved. That offensive line board, as you know, is pretty large already. So maybe they have taken a look and like somebody better. Who knows? But at that camp, I did like what I saw from him.
Yeah, you got to see a FSU commitment there, and offensive lineman Xavier Payne. You weren't all shot in the butt about it. He's a big old kid, but I saw one of your videos that you posted on him, and he did lean, got out overextended, and got beat around the corner. And we got a couple of posts, comments on that post from a couple of Florida State fans I saw as we were going throughout the day on Sunday. So, what did you see? Did you see anything from Xavier that stood out to you positively? And what do you think he needs to do to become a better offensive lineman based on what you saw?
Well, he certainly has the size and the body to be able to play offensive line and do it at a really high level. I just don't know that it's going to be at tackle. As you said, he looked a little bit stiff. He got beat around the outside. I think with a move inside, he should be able to control the defender in front of him. Obviously, depending on scheme and what the defense is doing, he should be able to control that a little bit better. I struggled to say that I was unimpressed with what I saw because, again, was it an off day? Is he just out of position right now? Who knows? But there was a little bit left to be desired. But obviously, this was my first time watching him. Could have been a bad day. Don't everybody has them. So,
well, what we do know is he had some of the best hair at the camp. We do know.
Yes,
that.
he did.
He's got
he did.
Glowing locks that we're all going to be. I'm getting more jealous of by the day as mine continues to go away. Another nugget.
Mine's going faster than yours, so I completely sympathize with that. And he had some nice earrings too. So
I did not check those out. I checked the hair out and the video out. All right, so you had a really interesting nugget, and when you sent it to me, I was like, well. There's a song by 38 Special called "Hold On Loosely," and you spoke with someone familiar with the recruitment of linebacker Duhan Forkpa Jr., and who's a kid that's been on Florida State's campus a number of times, but it seems like maybe the Seminoles are falling in the wrong direction based on not reading not picking up on I think he calls himself DJ, not picking up on DQ,
mm-hmm.
not putting on not reading the signals. Tell us a little bit about what you heard.
Yeah, from what I heard, despite having a good visit earlier in January and setting up that official visit with Florida State in January, the relationship between the new staff and Forkpa isn't developing as much as Forkpa would like. Let's put it that way. It just seems like there's a bit of a rip in the communication line between the two. This is something that can sometimes happen when you're switching between coaching staffs, especially when you've been recruited for a long time by another coaching staff. There's still a lot of time to go for the Florida State coaching staff to trend things back in the right direction. But from what I was told from my sources, it's that the relationship aspect, it just isn't as strong as you would have hoped with the transition between coaching staffs.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens, and I've said this a lot. I'll keep on saying it until the season starts. Depending on what Florida State does in season with their record-wise, I think that's going to impact their recruitment on a lot of kids, but it may have something to do with the Fort Pa thing. But yeah, sometimes if kids giving you all the signals that he's not ready to make a decision, sometimes it's not a good idea to try to force a decision. I was in sales and marketing, did a job like that right out of college. I remember my boss was with me on a sales call, and I tried to be aggressive. I was with my boss, and I wanted to close the sale. And so I tried to close the sale, and he goes, he told you. We walked outside, got in the car. He goes, he told you about 3/4 of the way through the conversation. He wasn't ready to make a decision. He tried to leave by closing the sale. And he goes, one thing I will tell you is don't ever disagree with the decision maker, because you're not going to change their mind. So anyway, he seems like a sharp kid. And like I said, Florida, these things have a way of getting soothed over for one reason or the other. And maybe they'll slow their roll with him a little bit, and that'll help their recruitment of DQ. All right, so there's a lot going on. We had practice yesterday. There were visitors. They got 3 2027 kids committed within the last couple of days, which is great. They got more minimum 2027's recruiting class right now than they do 2026. But, I like a couple of the players. I was really impressed with Purdy's film. I think he's a guy that you take. And when you can get his commitment, he's an outstanding athlete. Great ball skills, but that's Cornelius. Is it Cornelius Purdy? Is that how you pronounce it?
Cornelius, I think so.
Yeah. So he committed. He is a kid that he's long, he's athletic, he's thick. I think he's got a bright future in front of him. I see the reason they took his commitment. Then you had Bryce Williams committed the day before that. Listen. They know more about him than I do. It's not it's a 2027 commit. I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. I don't think he was as a no-brainer as the Purdy kid. Plays mostly off zone coverage. Don't see him in one-on-one very much. He breaks on the ball well. Not afraid to tackle, but leaves his feet too much for my liking. Kind of a head ducker. But that'll change. He was only a sophomore this year. He'll get bigger, more physical. But can he play press man, and how much is he going to be asked to play press man? So those are my thoughts. We covered the other Mekhi Williams commitment last week, but so you got Bryce Williams, Cornelius Purdy. What are your thoughts on their commitments? And to me, the reason I'm not making a big deal of it is if Florida State was in a situation where their coach didn't have to win, I might get a little bit more excited about it, but Mike Norvell's got to get through 2025 and 2026 before these kids even step on campus. But what's your thought on those two kids?
Yeah, I think it's always important to notate that these are 2027 commitments. It's a year and a half of a calendar that you're going to have to go and survive through before these kids sign on the dotted line. Curiously enough, all of the commits so far in the 2027 class are all defensive backs, or technically Cornelius is an athlete who can play both sides. He plays safety and wide receiver. I'm not quite sure which side of the ball Florida State likes him on the most, but he can play safety as well.
Which assistant coach did he tag in his Twitter announcement?
I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look.
If he tagged Tim, he's a wide receiver. If he tagged Evan, he's a defensive back.
We'll have to go back and check. But either way, yeah, no, I 100% agree with you about the Purdy take. It kind of came out of nowhere, but you take a look at his film and there's a lot to like. With Bryce Williams, I think it's important to notate that there's also some ties to Florida State as a program that might have incentivized an early commitment here. Obviously, he's got a relationship with recruiting assistant Devin Rispress, excuse me. And some other ties to the program, but he's somebody that they've had on campus before. He was here for a junior day as well in January, so it's not like this is out of the blue either. But yeah, to your point, there's a long way to go for both these prospects. They both have some good film. Obviously, Purdy I think is the better take right now, but they're both extremely young. They both have time to grow. They both have 2 more full seasons of football ahead of them. So check back in a year or so and see where they are.
Yeah, Purdy's got unbelievable ball skills. That's the one thing that popped off to me on this film. That
Yes.
kid can catch a football. I'm not sure I'm not sure I'd move him from wide receiver to DB in college, but I did not watch any of his DB tape. I just watched his wide receiver tape. And yeah, the Williams kid and the other Williams kid,
Hey, there's two Williams.
Mackay, both of those kids have ties to Repris. So Devin trying to make his impact known right away as he arrives in Tallahassee to work in the recruiting department. He was the first guy to offer Mackay Williams, offered him at FAMU, then offered him at Colorado, and then offered him at FSU. So Devin getting in there right away, getting some guys up on the board. So that's good. He's not, getting some kids interested in Florida State. And we've heard his name associated with 2 of the 3 2027 commits. So, but yeah, they got a little momentum. One of the notes that I had for today, and I just saw it break a little right before the show, FSU running back commit Amari Thomas has scheduled 3 other official visits outside of Florida State. He's going to visit South Carolina, Kentucky, and interestingly enough, Kansas State. The one thing that stands out to me right now on his official visit list is there's no Auburn, and that to me is the major concern. So if you're a Florida State fan, at least somebody else could get involved here. And Florida State continues to recruit other running backs. You talked to one of them yesterday, Carson Baker. What did Carson have to say? It was his first visit to Tallahassee.
Yeah, the Florida State made a really good first impression on Baker. Just to loop back in and talk about Thomas. When he came on campus last week, he mentioned those official visits, and he said that he's scheduling those visits purely off of relationships. So I found it also really interesting that Auburn was not amongst those. So I wonder if Auburn completely pulled back after he committed to Florida State in January, because you and I might agree on this. They were probably neck and neck, but Florida State, obviously, with those back-to-back visits in January, kind of pulled away to get his commitment in January. So I thought it was interesting that Auburn wasn't in play. But yeah, with Carson, we talked to him through day 1 of a multi-day visit, which is becoming a trend this spring with these kids coming and taking multi-day visits. So he took in practice. And I think the main thing to take away is that he really had a lot of positive things to say, not only about Coach David Johnson, the running backs coach, but also had a ton of good things to say about Coach Malzahn. So they're going to get an official visit from him. I believe it's June 6th. He might be back on campus sooner than that. But I think it's a positive step in the right direction, especially because some of those other, highly sought after running back targets that we've talked about on the show before, the Jay Lamars of the world, the Javian Osborns, who Javian Osborn is now down to 2 schools. Jay Lamar, Clemson seems to have emerged as the number 2 candidate to try and pull him away from Georgia, who he has been very open and public about, saying that Georgia, everybody's chasing them right now. So I think it's good for Baker to have come on campus and said a lot of positive things. He seemed excited about what he saw in terms of the offense that he looked on in practice. So that this recruitment is going to be one to monitor moving forward.
Yep. FSU continues to play quarterback roulette in relation to its 2026 recruiting class. Bowie Bentley is off the list. He ex-Florida State off last week, although, as I said after he announced it, he's got Georgia as one of his schools. If Jared Curtis goes to Georgia or Landon Duckworth goes to Georgia, he's off that list. He may be back on Florida State's. And Landon Duckworth looks like he is leaning towards Ole Miss based on everything I read and hear. That leaves you with, and listen, I don't think they got a shot at Keyshawn Henderson at Houston. I really don't.
No.
So who are the next group of guys? And we started to see that picture. I know you have already talked about Jaden O'Neal coming on campus at some point this spring, but Loganville, Georgia, Grayson quarterback Travis Burgess was on campus yesterday. Nick, what did he have to say? What were your takeaways from that?
Yeah, it was interesting because out of all of the, we talk about, we started with those three original quarterbacks that were quote unquote the replacement for Brady Schmeigel. And as the list has come down and we've come to a second group of contenders, I think Travis Burgess is the closest to what Gus may be looking for. I think the important thing to note here is that he did not come away with an offer. I thought that was not necessarily telling, but in terms of how far along this relationship is, the fact that he hasn't come away from the offer means that there's still quite a few steps to go. But he said that he made it a priority to get up here pretty much as soon as Gus reached out to him and said, hey, we're interested in you. He wanted to come up here and see what the interest level was. And even though, there are a couple of schools that are ahead right now that have official visits set up, Auburn, North Carolina, and Wisconsin off the top of my memory. I think that he, at least the interest is enough to where Burgess is going to hear Florida State out. He's going to even though Florida State is late to the process, there's still the interest there to where if that offer does come through, once they talk a little bit more and schedule subsequent visits, that he may present himself as an option to keep in mind.
Yeah, it's strange to me that where they are, they did not offer him. So either they're not completely, if they want to see something from him in the spring practice, high school spring practice, or the other end of that is they could be worried about if they offered him, he want to commit, and they're not ready to take that commitment yet. So there could be several reasons for that. But it's more than likely one of those two things. So, but yeah, listen. It's getting interesting at the quarterback position and several others for that matter. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. And I think that, Nick, I got a question for you. So
sure.
What happens first? Florida State gets a 2026 quarterback commit, or Aaron Rodgers signs with the Steelers or Vikings?
Oh God. Is that what's in the news right now? Is Aaron Rodgers is either the Steelers or the Vikings? I honestly haven't kept up too much.
Well, I've heard depending on who you listen to. There's one guy I listen to that talks quarterbacks in the NFL, thinks he's waiting on the 49ers. Another guy thinks the Vikings. Another guy thinks he's just trying to play out the drama. It's going to be the Steelers. That he just likes to be.
Let me answer it this way. I don't foresee Florida State getting a 2026 quarterback commitment anytime soon. Now, whether that happens before Aaron Rodgers finds another team, or maybe he retires. So, God, if he retires and then Florida State still doesn't have a 2026 quarterback commitment, we might be waiting for a long time, Pat. Yeah. But yeah, let's put it that way. I don't foresee Florida State finding their 2026 single caller anytime soon. It's interesting to see where they go from here. I think the worst case scenario is right now is if Duckworth pulls an early commitment to Ole Miss and you go into those official visits, either, maybe he decides, hey, I'm not going to take my official visits, A, or B, you go into those official visits with him being committed somewhere else. You would hope for Florida State's sake that he stays open until he takes his visits and then makes a decision. Because the options at quarterback are dwindling. And obviously you made the point to say that everything is fluid. And it is. QB dominoes can cause utter chaos, as you and I were privy to when Trammell and Carter Smith and Kevin Sperry popped up out of nowhere. So we've known pretty recently that quarterback dominoes can cause some chaos. So, but there's a long way to go.
Well, I've got some good news and bad news that is breaking from Florida State right now.
Okay.
They just sent out a media advisory. So we're fixing to have a little Osceola lottery. Where you're going to be allowed to come to this weekend scrimmage, but only two of us can go from the Osceola. So, Bob, I know you're in the background, buddy. We need to have a Florida Lotto because I'm fighting for that one. I'm fighting for one of those two spots. I got to talk about them for 3 hours next week. So
Osceola boxing match.
Yeah, so we're gonna have
Osceola boxing match.
We're gonna have to have a little bit of a office talk about that, and I think we may start with seniority, meaning the oldest two first, which locks Jerry and I in. But so anyway, the media will get an opportunity to watch Florida State on Saturday.
Now, is this in addition to the scrimmage next weekend, or is this in replacement of that? is what I'm wondering.
No. It says Florida State's football scrimmage this Saturday, April 5th, will be open to the media. Media wishing to attend must RSVP to Steve McCartney no later than Friday at 9 p.m. Due to space limitations inside the IPF, there will be a number of maximum of 2 people per outlet. This will be an observation opportunity only. No photos or videos will be permitted. So, Bob, I think you're in the background, buddy. You got some decisions to make.
I think he stepped away, but he'll be delighted to hear that news. I mean, obviously, the caveat is if that's the only time that we're going to be able to view the team this spring, then that changes things. I mean, obviously, you're still grateful for it, but if you're getting this weekend and next weekend scrimmage, well, then that's obviously that would be nice. So I'm curious.
Yeah, well, it makes no mention of the last scrimmage, although I'd heard that was the one we were going to get. Now, I can't tell you who I heard it from. I don't remember. But anyway, so yeah, good. Well, either 2 sets of eyes will get to lay eyes on the Seminole Saturday. I hope it's me. And maybe we can come out with a rotation. But I'm going to fight for it. I can tell you that. All right. So Nick, any other recruiting updates before we close her down for the day?
Nothing off the top of my head. I think something important, well, not necessarily important, but something that's kind of been the trend of the day is I guess everybody on the Florida State recruiting board got their graphics all at the same time because there's been a plethora of those graphics for confirmations of official visits. So a lot of Florida State's targets are posting that. Off the top of my head, Derek Cooper, Samari Matthews, and some guys that we weren't sure were going to take a visit, like Tyree Green out of Buford, who at least I don't think we reported had set up an official visit. So a lot of those guys are confirming their intentions to official visit, and obviously we'll have to see for them to get there because obviously it's not binding in a contract or anything. It's just a nice confirmation of all the official visits that we've been reporting over at floridastate.rivals.com for the better part of the last 2 months are accurate information and all that jazz. So
yeah, we reported a lot of those. The only thing I was disappointed in the graphic, Nick, is there's no date included on the graphic.
Yeah. I don't know why they did that.
College football program that has an official visit graphic includes the weekend they're going to be there or the dates are going to be there.
Maybe it's because they don't even know. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway. Oh, and I hope they know. Yeah, but I was like, man,
maybe they're trying to keep it secret. Who knows? They're secretive over there these days.
Oh, they can't get away from us because I mean, there's 4 weekends that they can be there, so we'll be there for all of them. Yep. So
all right. Well, listen, if you're not a subscriber to theosceola.com, please go to theosceola.com. Check us out. You can get Nick's nuggets from Rivals Camp. He's got a notebook on who was at practice yesterday. He's got a story on Carson Baker. We've got our spring practice notebook with Bob. Kurt's got the baseball report. He will have his Alex Lodice article coming out tomorrow. So you can go to theosceola.com and check us out. And please subscribe while you're there. We think you'll enjoy the content. We've also got the latest on the basketball players that have committed to Florida State and new head coach Luke Loucks, including LeJay Jones from St. Bonaventure, Kobe McGee from Drexel, and Chauncey Wiggins, a 6'10" power forward from Clemson, has committed and not officially signed with Florida State. So we got all that at theosceola.com. And if you're not a subscriber to the Osceola YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe button before you leave today, and also hit the notification button so that you know when we're doing shows live or taped. Our plan right now will be to be back Friday at 3, and we'll pretty much have the same lineup. Maybe Kurt doing baseball and football. Bob may or may not join us, but Nick will be back on to tell us what we need to know from Thursday's recruiting visits and anything that's happened in the meantime. But we certainly appreciate you joining us. Hope we enjoyed the information, and we will see you on Friday on the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. Have a great Wednesday, everybody.